What's up, ladies and gentlemen, Dukesloth here. The new patch, which released Jing Wei, brought us an amazing item, or a changed version of an item that is truly amazing, and I feel like a lot of people haven't really noticed yet, haven't really acknowledged the power of this item yet, so I felt like making this little video to just explain the full potential of the item that is in the game now. The item I'm talking about is Genji's Guard. Looking at the base stats, this item is quite simple. Genji's Guard costs 2,200 gold, has relatively even price scaling between the different stages of the item, provides you with 80 magical protection, 10% cooldown reduction, and 20 MP5. So far so good. The interesting thing about this item is the new passive. The passive now is, when you take magical damage from abilities, your cooldowns are reduced by 2 seconds. This can only occur once every 30 seconds. This may remind you a little bit of Spear of Desolation, which has a cooldown reset of sorts as well, though this item works quite differently. The unique thing about this item is it only works on one of the 5 sources of damage in the game. There are 5 different sources, being true damage, physical damage from auto attacks, physical damage from abilities, magical damage from auto attacks, and magical damage from abilities. Even items like Hide of the Nemean Lion or Midgardian Mail work both on physical and magical auto attacks. Genji's Guard only works on magical abilities. Also, it only works as long as you have an ability that is on cooldown. It doesn't factor in how many abilities are on cooldown, however, so it's very interesting, especially how it works in combination with other cooldown items. To be clear here, in terms of defensive stats, it's by far not the best item. If you compare it to Bulwark of Hope, which in my opinion is still relatively overpowered, you get a lot less defensive stats. Bulwark of Hope only costs 125 gold more, provides you with 20 magical protection less, but gives you an extra 200 health and up to 350 health shield. In total, meaning the defense stats that you get from it, the effective health that you have both against magical and physical damage is much, much higher. Still, Genji's Guard has a very good use on certain characters, and it can be used a lot more offensively than Bulwark of Hope can. It can probably be compared better to Breastplate of Valor, which is slightly more expensive, but generally fulfills the same purpose in the physical department. It has slightly less physical protection than Genji's Guard has magical protection. It has flat mana instead of MP5, while I highly prefer the MP5 myself. And it has 20% cooldown reduction right off the bat, but no passive. To see how effective this item really is, we sadly don't get around some number crunching. What I've listed here is the normal cooldown for the abilities, then the cooldown with maximum cooldown reduction of 40%, and then 30% cooldown reduction, which I think is a very realistic number, because usually if you are a guard that profits from cooldown reduction, you will get a 20% CDR item, for example, Jotun's Wrath, and then get Genji's Guard on top, which provides 10% cooldown reduction on its own. I've listed some guards along with the cooldowns, which I think can benefit from this item, at least to some extent. We have Guan Yu, who already has a lowered cooldown with the dash on his 2, who is the only guard who basically has this mechanic in his kit on its own, but he can basically double the mechanic by using this item, reducing the cooldown of his heal by 4 seconds in combination with his 2. Sadly, he has to time everything right for that to work. We have Sir Cat and Ratatoskr, who have a 10-second ability that goes down to 7 seconds with 30% CDR. We have a Willish, whose Feather Step is on 5.6 seconds with the same CDR. And then we have the Outliers Chang'e and Herbois, who reach 3.5 seconds and 2.1 seconds with 30% CDR respectively. Looking at these numbers, you could easily think that Herbois benefits from this item the most, because he could go down to 0.1 second cooldown. But you have to remember how situational this ability is. It only triggers when you're hit by an ability, and often being hit by a magical ability also means that you're gonna be stunned or CC'd in some sort. If you get CC'd for 2 seconds, then it's useless to have the CDR in the first place, because you can't use the ability more often than before. It's simply off cooldown, but you still can't use it unless you beats or something like that. Therefore, the best gods for this item are those who have main abilities that are used early in the fight and are on cooldown very often. Namely, Awilish and Sir Cat. You will often use the Feather Stab or the Death Bane on those gods before anything else, or right after anything else before the enemy is capable of doing anything, and then get hit by some kind of ability. Now, getting the reset is really helpful because you can use your core damaging ability once again in the same fight. It can be useful for the other gods that are listed here as well, but more often than not, they have other items that are more beneficial for them. The last one that I think is definitely worth mentioning is Guan Yu. Guan Yu may not always heal first, and it may not always trigger in the way he wants it to do, but it may help him to get another reset for his 2 that allows him to get the cooldown reduction of that. And Guan Yu also has the chance to stay in extended engagements to make use of the passive multiple times. If his heal gets a reset in the right moment, it's extremely strong. There are probably some more Guardians that can make use of it as well, just for the taunt from Athena or stuff like that. Generally, you have to realize that 2 seconds off an ability's cooldown equal 10% CDR on a 20-second cooldown ability. Outside of the ultimates, I don't think there is even any ability in the game that has a 20-second cooldown. I may be wrong here. It's still very often worth on other characters, though not as great as on Sir Cat or Awilish. So when should you buy it? Probably not if there's only a single magical damage dealer on the enemy team. If there's, however, a magical guardian and a magical mid laner, it can already be worth it. You have to consider which enemies are going to be the main sources of damage, if you may need to get a Bulwark of Hope because you're in the risk of getting focused, and similar stuff that just goes into general item decisions. I would probably try and get this item as much as possible because it allows for so much more aggression onto the mid and the duo lane as long as they have magical damage dealers or guardians in those lanes that might use abilities on you. The second thing that should be considered is your own role. If you're a jungler, you can pretty much choose if you're gonna go for the lane with a magical quite often or not. The decision is easier if you're a guardian or warrior that is in the duo lane, because then you will get hit by magical abilities much more, and that makes it easier to choose Genji's guard. What I still need to find out is if Genji's guard will proc on abilities like Athena's taunt as well, as those technically don't actually deal damage. They're still magical abilities, but according to the description, the ability has to deal damage for it to work. Depending on that, the efficiency may differ slightly, but it shouldn't be a major difference. With that, I think I covered everything I need to say about this item. Thank you guys for watching. Dukesloth out.